let's talk about a very simple grounding exercise that I find really helps me to reorient into the here and now if I'm dissociated or if I'm really anxious and I'm just kind of all over the place. Sometimes breathing and meditation and mindfulness actually make my anxiety worse. And that is a very real thing that happens to lots of people. So, if we are someone that has lots and lots of anxiety or lots of trauma, mindfulness and doing meditation is best done with a professional who can help guide us through some of those things. So, this is a tool that I use when those things aren't accessible to me, when noticing my breath triggers more anxiety. There are lots of versions of this. There's a long version, which is my favorite because I am stubborn and it takes me a while to come back to myself sometimes, and then a short version. So we're going to do the short version today just in the interest of time, and then you can make it as long as you'd like or even shorten it even more if you just need a little check-in for yourself. So we'll do the short and then I'll explain to you how I do a longer version. Now, one of the reasons why pleasure is so incredible is because pleasure is about the senses. And pleasure really only ever exists in the here and now. So if we can tap in with our senses, which is one of the reasons why doing anything sensual helps us to also get really present and to get clear here in the now with our bodies, at least on some level. This is something that we can use that helps when we're kind of out here. If we focus on our senses, it can help us to connect with this body of ours in this time and in this space. So we're going to touch in with each of the 5 senses in this short version. Best part is no one is going to know that you're doing it. You can literally do it anywhere. You can do it in a bus, in a doctor's office, at work, in the middle of a meeting, pretty much anywhere where you can just have a few seconds and your senses. So we're going to start by noticing 5 things we see. And take your time in noticing 5 things we see. So for me, I'm going to look around and see what are 5 things that I feel drawn towards. This book, I see it. This microphone. There's some lavender flowers that I really love over here. So I'm going to take those in. There's a bright light in my face. I take that in. One more thing is this water bottle that's right here. So you don't have to say anything to anybody. You can just gently look around, but really take it in and connect it. That's a microphone. I can see the details. That's a book. I can see the colors and the font, the different size letters. I can see the umbrella around the light in each of the spokes. So once you've done that with your 5 sights, then we move on to 4 sensations that we feel. So it might be the clothes on your skin. I'm feeling the color right here. It can be maybe the little bit of tension that you've got somewhere in your body, or even a little bit of pleasure. But check in and find 4 sensations that you feel. And it can be on the outside of your body or on the inside of your body. But just really notice. I'm noticing my weight on this chair, this color. Noticing there's a little curl in my sock under one of my toes. And there's some tension in my back. So 5 things we see, 4 things we feel, sensations. Next, we're going to do 3 things we hear. And if closing your eyes helps, great, or softening the gaze. But when we kind of expand out to the things we hear, it might be inside this space or outside in that space, but really just take a moment to really hear 3 things. I might be one of them, I might not be. I hear cars on the wet road outside. I can just barely hear a neighbor's television. Now notice two things that you smell. And depending on the weather that day and where you are, that might be tough. So give yourself a chance to just notice. I'm getting a little faint whiff of dinner cooking on the stove. And a hint of the mousse in my hair. And it can be really subtle, and that might take you a couple of minutes. So if you have the time, give yourself a chance. And then finally, one thing you taste. You might just be tasting your own mouth if you haven't eaten anything in a while. Maybe it's slightly sour. Maybe you just brushed your teeth. I had some dental work done yesterday, so I can get a little bit of a taste of some of that work. So that's the taste I'm going to go with. By moving through the senses, we are helping ourselves to orient to this body in this moment, which can be such a help around worry and anxiety if we're ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. Noticing those senses. So that was the short version. 5 things that you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. Sometimes that's not enough for me. Sometimes when I'm really in a panicked state, that just kind of starts getting me into the place. So my much longer version is you move everything down sequentially and repeat it by 1. So we just did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If I needed more, I would start it over again, but at 4. So 4 new things that I see, 3 new things that I feel, 2 new things I hear, and 1 new thing I smell. And then again, this time with 3 things that I see, 2 things I feel, 1 thing I hear. And then again, 2 things I feel or see, 2 things I see, 1 thing I feel. And then finally, 1 more thing I see. Taking the time to do that usually really helps me to regulate my system pretty significantly. But even that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or even just doing a version of that can work wonders. So I invite you to experiment and get really playful with it. I hope that felt helpful.